I'm going to check my antifreeze or coolant level in my engine. There's a couple of places that we can do that. It depends on what kind of vehicle that we're looking at. We can have a reservoir somewhere, which is, you know, like a storage container, or we can have what we call a degas bottle, and this vehicle happens to have a degas bottle, which is located right here. A lot of older vehicles might have a radiator up front. Well, they all have radiators up front, but sometimes there's a radiator cap on it, and that cap is our access to filling the radiator. But there's always going to be a reservoir with that radiator, and we always want to check the reservoir, the level in the reservoir, rather than pull the cap off and check the level in the radiator. The cooling system's job is to keep the engine cool from all those internal combustions that happen in the cylinders. If we can't keep the engine cool, what happens is parts start to expand and seize in the engine block. We can warp cylinder heads, and we can do some serious engine damage if we can't control the heat in the engine. So we have a coolant or an antifreeze that gets circulated within the engine, and it pulls the heat off of it, and it runs it to the front of the vehicle where the radiator is, and the radiator has some air that blows past it, and it cools the fluid, where the fluid then gets recycled back into the engine and keeps the engine cool. So checking the level of our coolant is important so the cooling system can do its job and effectively cool the engine as we're driving. As I said earlier, we're going to find our coolant check in a couple of different places. The degas bottle, which on most late model vehicles, you know, newer ones, we're going to see a bottle like this somewhere in the engine compartment. Older vehicles, we're going to have a radiator up here, and we might have a radiator cap somewhere up on in the front of the engine. Now I want you to notice that. So I'm going to take this radiator cap off the degas bottle. This engine is completely cold, so it's safe, but I want you to take a look at what's shown on the cap. Our warning is on our cap, and a lot of times you'll see that on the radiator as well. Notice that it says, hey, exclamation point, hey, caution, look at your owner's manual. And we never want to do it when the radiator is hot. We always want to, if we're going to take the cap off, the radiator or the engine has to be cold, okay? That's really super important that we adhere to that safety practice or that safety rule, okay? If we pull the cap off at the wrong time, especially if it's on the radiator, if we pull the cap off, that coolant can come spraying out, and it can cause some serious injury. In some cases, worst case scenario, of course, would be death. But so we need to be really aware of the temperature of the engine and when we check or how we check this fluid. So we always want to check this fluid when it's cold. We should. And if we go over to the degas bottle, you'll see on here it says cold fill range, okay? So here's our cold fill range. So basically, here's our maximum line, and there's either going to be a minimum line down here, but I don't see it. If it's not, then it's indicated by this seam in the bottle. So my cold fill should be somewhere in between there. Now it actually, if you take a look down there, I'll move this little wire out of the way. I guess I can't. So you'll actually see that down here. See where that fluid level is? Because this again is a translucent reservoir. That fluid level right here is where it's at. Now this engine is cold, so it should be up to this level right here. So in my evaluation, is it low, okay, full, or over full? I am low on engine coolant. Will that affect the way that the engine cools? Maybe, maybe not, but ultimately I want to make sure my fluids are all in the okay range. Coolant comes in lots of different colors. If you're not sure what kind of coolant you need, of course you can go to your owner's manual. Generally you want to match the colors. Go to your auto parts store, ask them to look it up for you. It's not just the old green coolant fits all anymore. There's lots of different colors of coolant, so if we need to add some, make sure you get the right type. On that note, if you were to add, remember we never want to open the cooling system when it's hot. The degas style or even the radiator style. Now if we had a radiator style with a cap, again you're going to have a reservoir of some type going to it, and you're going to have some type of indication on the cap that it's coolant, and it'll actually say, you know, coolant only. But it's going to have a low or a maximum fill or a minimum and a maximum or a full or a low. You're just going to have to find the fluid level in there. If it is low, you just open that up and you put some coolant in there, but you don't want to open the system, the cap of the system, when the engine is hot. Wait for the engine to cool off, let it sit for a couple of hours, and then attend to it.